Hello, everyone, and welcome to another review discussion. My name is Matt Hughes, and I am hosting this chat tonight. And I am joined by two legends who have spent way more time in this game than I have. First up, we have Jason. How are you, mate?
Yeah, honestly, living the dream.
Living the dream, living the dream. He's fighting monsters and fighting the hospital system at the same time. And over on the other side, we have Paul. How are you, buddy?
Fighting sleep deprivation and children who don't want to sleep.
Yeah, that
It's
sounds
been
like a
a
normal fight.
gigantic obstacle through this whole process.
Yeah.
The
One
familial
little
monster.
nightmare triggered by Paw Patrol has cost me an entire week of good night's sleep. You add a tiny
Ah.
little brand new puppy into the mix who then wants to yap and make a fuss all week. It's any wonder I got to play this game. at all.
Soulspawn's for parents. This is
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah.
Any wonder I got to play Monster Hunter Wilds at all.
And that's exactly what we're talking about. Thank you for the segue there, Paul. As you can see from the filthy big graphics sitting around our heads, if you're watching on YouTube, we're going to talk about Monster Hunter Wilds, the latest in the hugely successful franchise from Capcom. Jason's put an inordinate amount of hours into this game. Paul's put less than that, but still a lot. And I'm, a fair chunk in, probably about 15 or 16 hours in. So I'm in the host chair, and we're going to talk to these two guys who've got a bit more experience than I do. Firstly, though, I want to start with accessibility in this game because Monster Hunter has always been a difficult franchise to, kind of break into. It's quite a steep learning curve. I think they've made a lot of strides here to improve that. Wouldn't you say, Jason?
Gosh, it's so complicated. I have
Yeah.
hit on the
incredibly
pain point
divisive
straight away,
feelings
didn't
straight off the bat. You had to hit me hard.
Yes, I did.
So, I'm looking at two different versions of accessibility here. Number one is ease of how easy the game is actually to get into, and the other is the actual accessibility.
Yeah.
The accessibility settings, absolutely incredible. I've never seen such diverse settings of trichromia, like colorblindness settings, arachnophobia settings, motion settings, all sorts of different things that took me quite a while to get through, which I think is awesome, really, really cool, especially for a game that demands quite a bit of your body. So it's really
And your
good.
soul
that
at times too.
yeah, yeah. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
The other part is how easy the game is to get into, and I'm like, they have done some incredible things on making the new player experience quite good, but on the other hand, they have made things maybe so much worse that it is so complicated. Like, I wrote about this in the written review, which you can read on the site. But
Plug.
yeah, start early. So two of the systems that are, in my mind, like critical to Monster Hunter, and that's the food system
Yeah.
and the armor upgrade system. The armor upgrade option is available, but you don't unlock it until much later. So I spent so much time wondering, how the hell do I upgrade my armor? What am I missing here? Running around, spending an hour going around mining spots because that's how it used to be in previous
Yeah.
games. Yep, no, we don't do that here, and it doesn't tell you that they don't do it there, and it doesn't take away the option, and like, oh god, it makes me so mad. I spent way too much time on that. And the food system, so in World, they made it as easy as possible. Right next to the leaving of the gathering hub was the chef. You go up to the chef, take whatever you need. Generally it'll request something and go on your way. In this, you go up to a chef and he gives you rations, and you're like, okay, great, what do I do with this? And because all they do is just give you a tiny little bar of stamina, and you're like, well, that doesn't seem right. I know from Monster Hunter that this is not right. It wasn't until pretty much high rank, so a good 30 hours into the game, where I realized that you can make food in your tent, but also the well done steaks will give you the the stamina and the health bonus that you might be hunting for. And I just didn't realize it. And like, if I didn't realize it, then other people are going to have a problem, and especially people that haven't played Monster Hunter before are just not going to realize that this exists. I literally thought that you just had to wait for a random chance to get the food, like, because every now and again you'll get like a meal at a town.
See, I found pretty early on that you could cook yourself out in the field, and that's what I had assumed was the go this time, because you can create your own meals there using different ingredients and things like that. And I thought, okay, instead of asking the cats this time, you do it yourself, you know. So that's how I played it. I didn't realize you could do anything at the 10 either, but you know.
Yeah,
And to be
because,
fair, I
like,
do think that's kind of important too, because
Yeah.
of this, and I'm kind of skipping a little bit ahead here to kind of the quasi open world sort of design. Like, you've got this open world, but they're kind of like like they're open zones that are all connected by a little pathway that links them all up, but
Yep.
fully traversable from one to the other. You're going to potentially spend larger stretches away from base, which, you know, probably necessitates the need to cook your own and get a little bit more from it. So I get how it works, but I do Jason's point. Like, I guess when you're initially, you know, heading out, I think it was kind of that ham-fisted clumsiness that we sometimes see from this franchise, where they just didn't quite explain that very well, or show people where to go to do what you need to do. It wasn't a difficult system to understand, and once you knew, no problems at all. But they just didn't really allude to it very well at all. That, for
A
me,
lot of the
extended to-
game-
sorry, go on.
feels like you need a guide, and that's always been the case with Monster Hunter, I feel. I thought, though, what they did this time, they added a couple of things, like you can have AI companions now, which is fantastic. That's so good for helping people, especially when they come across, you know, some really tough boss battles initially and they're still trying to learn a new weapon or whatever. Having just some AI cannon fodder on your side is super helpful, you know, just to give you that second to breathe and chug a potion or something like that, you know, even. I thought that was great. And I also thought how they've kind of really introduced the monsters in kind of during the story in like a 3-stage sort of, you know, here's a normal monster, learn your weapons as stage 1. Stage 2, introduce some status effects, and then stage 3, you know, you kind of got a bit of prep, a bit more with, you know, some more appropriate armor or something like that. So I thought that was really good, and I thought they thought about that brand new player in those instances quite well. But then again, also there's just a wall of information that you've just got to dig through, and the best way is to just, you know, fuck around and find out, really.
Yeah, like, I love, like, a lot of the systems. Like, I love that it gives you a optional objective to go to the like arena to like fight other training area or whatever it's called. Like, because most people would just skip it, and if it's got an optional objective, people are like, oh, maybe I will just go quickly check that out, and they're like, oh, okay, I can kind of see how this works. In World, almost everyone I know skipped it, never knew it existed, and it's a great way to like actually fiddle around with the weapons. So a lot of that stuff is really cool. I think Monster Hunter, I don't know if they'll ever solve this problem of like having a really good cohesive experience, but like, this is, I think, the game that the most people are going to get, or at least have the highest chance of getting. Like you said, the AI system of, you know, being able to, you know, bring in AI people is awesome. I think that's, like, because I know a lot of people that got to a, you know, specific hunt in World, and they're like, bounced off it. They're like, I don't want to fiddle around with this and like spend hours learning. In this, they can just, you know, bring in a hunt. No one's going to judge you, or if they do, screw those people.
Well, it's no different asking for help from a mate to come in either, right? Like,
well, that's
you know,
the thing. Yeah, I don't think the community's ever been kind of, at least in my experience, is kind of wired that way, that they're overly judgmental. I certainly found when I returned to Iceborne fairly recently, and I was absolutely very rusty, there was just no headaches in that respect whatsoever. People very embracing, and they just jump into, like, you fire up the SOS and they come piling in, and they're millions of hunter rank and master rank levels ahead of you, and they just put you on your shoulders and carry you along if that's what you needed. So until, certainly in my case, until I kind of got my sea legs again, and then okay, cool. But I'll bring you along anyway, because why not? Let's have a bit of fun whaling on this bad boy.
Yeah, no, I do like it. What about weapons? Got some favourites this time round, folks?
I'm still a hammer user. Won't ever change. And as Jason and I
MC
alluded to in the
To be honest,
review,
it feels like there's 3 different camps of Monster Hunter players. There's the people like me that change every single game. There's the people like Paul who stay the same every single game.
Mm.
And there's the people that only play the new weapon. This one doesn't have a new weapon, which is kind of a bummer. I'm going to be honest.
now.
They gave me the opportunity to bring 2 weapons and didn't put in the new one, which was a bit sad. So I played Lance this time around. Never played it before. I had so much fun with Lance. Like, holy hell, I was enjoying the hell out of myself. It was awesome.
Yeah, nice. I'm a bow guy. I've always been a bow guy, but then again, I'm only 2 Monster Hunter games and Wild Hearts in. So, this is my fourth kind of this experience. And I've always gone bow, and I found the bow super deep this time. Like, if there was one critical aspect I've had at the bow in the past, it's kind of, just spam attacks, line up for your heavy bow shot, and that was it. Whereas this time, there's a few combos going in. You can, there's like a vertical combo and a horizontal combo that you can tag together, and a whole bunch of different little tricks and auto targeting you can use on weak points. When a wound opens up on a monster, you can use the arrow to target that and line up a big hit, and things like that is super cool. And I found it really cool to dig into the new features, and I felt like they've put a lot of effort into making it less of a spammy sort of weapon, than and more of a
nuanced
sort of approach.
Yeah,
which is fun.
And you talking about the wound opening thing, I quite like that. Not so much like we're talking about accessibility and potentially even ease and those sorts of things before, and I think it's handy through that respect. But also, just as someone who's trying to accumulate as many parts as I can and components as I can to build out the gear, it's a really nice, friendly way to ensure that you've got a chance. And it's still, a lot of it still boils down to chance, but you've got a chance to get what you're looking for and progress more so than what you would have in previous games. I like that. And you were talking about the bow, and I guess since you're a bow user, you may not have noticed necessarily as much. I spoke about it with Jason when in our written review. I found as a hammer user, it's such a slow going thing, right? Like it's gigantic heaves, and I found in the past in prior games it would mean I'd have to be far more careful, understandably so, because I might only get 1 or 2 strikes in before that thing's ready to kind of bowl me over. And especially when I was kind of fresh into if I think more recently with World and Rise, I get a bit carried away at the beginning. Just kind of being used to a lot of other action games where you can kind of flail a bit more willy-nilly. In this case, I began the same way as I have with all those other games. I'm getting a bit too heavy-handed and, oh shit, I'm going to get swatted. And then I noticed that some of those hits weren't interrupting me. I feel like they've very specifically implemented not advertised either, but a light and heavy attack sort of system from the enemies that, depending on what they go with, may or may not interrupt you, which then does allow for, I think, certain weapon users to kind of really come to the fore a little bit more, potentially also bring that barrier of difficulty down a little bit further, because not every hit that you take is going to knock you off your line. You can potentially get that one final strike in that leads to an almighty waving of the hammer or whatever your weapon happens to be, a gigantic flourish that then knocks it over and exposes a wound and those sort of things. I feel like that decision there, though not necessarily signaled as far as I saw, I didn't see anything flagged in any of the menus or anything like that, has made a big difference as well, for good reasons mostly. But I think for those who are hunting that difficulty as well, maybe that might also be a pain point for some.
Yeah, I think it could potentially be. I wrote about this in the review as well. Like, I think that I honestly have to look at this objectively and think, have I gotten better? Am I just super used to this, or is this game easier? I think this is probably one of the easier Monster Hunters. I'm not going to say it's easy. High rank will still kick the hell out of you, especially at the very, very high rank, and eventually we'll get Master, and that'll be even more difficult again. Yeah. I think this is easier, but I think that's also 100% okay. Like, low rank, I was just using one set of armor all the way through. It wasn't until almost halfway through high rank that I changed out of low rank armor. And I'm like, finally I can, have to ditch this and actually change up to something. Yeah. But I think that's also 100% okay, because, I want more people to play Monster Hunter, and, if they can get over that ceiling of getting people in, then
you mean the 27 million people that bought Monster Hunter World? That's
it.
The problem is, though, Monster Hunter World, there was I was lucky enough to interview the lead on Monster Hunter World, and I've forgotten his name. But in the presentation he did to us at the press thing, he talked about that they had a lot of sales in Monster Hunter World, and they were very happy with that. But the statistics showed that there was an awful lot of people that bounced off.
Yep.
Like it was kind of a big hyped game that got a lot of people through the door initially. But he said, they were getting to 5 or 6 hours and bouncing. And he said, and that was one of the reasons they introduced the AI companions and things like that. And also the questionnaire at the start of the game that helps people choose which weapons are appropriate for them. He said those are some of the things they introduced to kind of combat that, because they don't want to take the Monster Hunter experience away from the seasoned professionals, but they want to make it available to more people. And so that was their goal with this one. He talked about that in quite depth,
Yeah.
And that's also,
like looking at the
Ryozo Sugimoto was who
that's it.
Yep.
Yeah, looking at the statistics, I just brought it up for World, and on PC, like only 70% of players ever completed a quest via multiplayer, and only like 65% or something ever mounted a monster. So realistically, that's a lot of people that did not fight a monster.
Well, distant ranged weapon users don't mount, but so that comes in.
That's fair.
Yeah. Another nice little system I noticed is, I don't know if you guys have it, but if you dodge as an arrow user at the right time, your stamina refills. So if you do a perfect dodge, your stamina refills. I don't know if that's a thing that the other weapons do, but I thought that was nice, because there's times that it kind of encourages that risk reward, especially with the bow and arrow, and trying to get that. If you can keep firing off a big volley of arrows and then get that last minute dodge, you can just keep hammering away at it. And but if you miss it, you cop it. So I thought that's a nice little thing that adds a bit to it as well.
Yeah, I played Lance, and Lance is maybe the most aggressive weapon I have ever played in my life, where anytime an enemy attacks you, you can hit a block button and parry the enemy. So anytime it's hitting you, you're just like halfway through a combo, you're like blocking it, instantly hitting it back. There were monsters I took down in like 2.5 minutes, and I'm like, I feel bad.
It's a really satisfying feeling, yeah. I haven't tried it in Wilds, and I really feel like I should now. I
want to try.
I can't believe in this I'm like segueing over to a mobile game here, but I've been playing Monster Hunter now since they launched it, and it has been this really great. Like, obviously we're talking about a different set of monsters here, but it's been a really great exercise in just kind of learning how some of these weapons work. Obviously, the way you interface with them, very different. But like saying, that's how the lance works. That's how this works. How can I kind of utilize these in different ways? Has been really fascinating. It was a really great one-to-one, actually, with even how the monsters worked in World, but that's a different aside. It does leave me tempted, once I've gone through and really exhausted what I want to exhaust from this, to maybe mess around with some of those, because I have learnt the ropes from that. And I can't, like Jason, the way you've described the lance thing, that is exactly how it works in now. And I've gone, oh, geez, I wouldn't, like you just talking about it going, oh, hang on, I should try that.
Like,
because right
when
now
you're staring down the eyes of a Rathalos, and it's like breathing fire at you, and you're just like moving forward with your lance out in a shield, and it's doing no damage, you're like, man, you're out of control. So much fun.
It's a really good feeling.
I think that's the like super big thing about Monster Hunter is like, and the reason I try a different weapon every time is like, it feels like a completely different game. Like, I used to play Hunting Horn, wildly different. Even like Hammer and Hunting Horn, which are fairly similar, play such differently, and it just like completely reinvents the game for you. So I've spoken to a few reviewers about this one, and none of them have actually said that their weapon feels bad, and that's such an insane thing. Like,
especially when there's like 14 weapons.
Yeah, 14
weapons. Yep. Yeah, that's a lot of very different combat systems to incorporate in a game.
Yep. Yeah,
I can honestly understand a great sword and a hammer, and those things that would share similarities, but they really don't. Yeah,
it's really cool. How did you guys play around with the dual weapon system? Like, I found at high rank, you end up going against 2 monsters at once. What I end up doing is, just to stop having to go back to base, I'd carry a raw weapon or whatever's the first monster is weak to, and then make sure that I have something for the other monster as well, so I can just switch out
The elemental
without going
type,
back to base.
So I can see how that would work in those later fights, but I've really barely dabbled in the set. I've got a just the initial sword. I forget what it's called sitting there that they've kind of kept up to speed, and occasionally I bring it out, but generally it's more for those little like small monster hunts where you got to get 9 fucking, and just to kind of get my head around it a bit. So yeah, I haven't really played with it. The bow's my jam, and I've just been focusing on getting through as much as I can with that.
Yeah, because you don't have to switch out with don't like switch out elements with bow, do you? You add coating.
You add coatings, yeah. So different coating, and different bows have different coatings, and
okay,
things like that. So yeah. So you know, for example, the bow I'm using at the moment is based on that oily bloody bug thing from the oil springs. The mosquito looking thing.
Horrifying looking thing.
Horrifying, gross. It's the grossest monster I've seen so far.
It's so disgusting.
The bow's built around that, and it has a slowing coating that the oil slows the other monster down a bit. Cool. So yeah. So things like that. Yeah.
What about you, Paul? Did you play around with it?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same as you, where I just kind of roll with the same weapon but multiple different elements, just so that I've got that versatility when I need to, and that's kind of been my go. Yeah, I'm like I said, you know, maybe down the road I'll start messing around with some different weapons. At which point maybe I'm dual wielding different types of weapons. But for now, it's 2 hammers, different elements, trying to cover off as much as I possibly can with any given hunt, especially if I don't know what it is that's coming my way.
Yeah, exactly. I'd just bring a raw weapon and a whatever my strongest element that I thought might be useful for the biome.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you think about the battles moment to moment though? Like there is a lot going on in these battles that was unexpected. Like whether it's like picking up bugs off the walls to heal yourself, or making sure that you grab.
Putting your weapon away during a battle is way more important this time than I think it was in World. You know, in World, you pretty much did it just so you could chug some potions and then keep rolling. This time, there's a whole bunch of environmental stuff that you can use when your weapon's away. That's, you know, the slingshot pellets are actually really useful this time. There's some really good ones in there.
Firing the dung pellets at them, for example, to separate enemies, get them clearing out, that sort of thing.
And those spike ones that kind of, you know, do a heap of damage and also a heap of wounding and things like that. So they're really worth using. And some natural traps that you can pull down and things like that. So it's cool. I like it, and you've got to stay on your toes to you know, really examine where you're fighting at any one time to see what you can use to help you, because it can make a massive difference.
Yeah, I think the situational awareness that it brings to battles is actually super difficult. Also, when you just pull down those like massive things onto an enemy, God, it feels good.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff there going on. I think the environments are really good in this game. I really enjoyed the environments. I found the initial environment, the desert one, a bit boring. But after that, I really like the forest in this one. I think it's very cool.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And the way the weather changes things, that's very cool too. And that's something that's new to this game, is the weather changing everything, and different monsters come out, and
the way that electrical storm fired up the first time when Ray Dow was in the area. Oh, that was good.
Yeah.
But I mean, you talk about the environments, and I think for me, and geez, I keep reiterating things from the review, but like, it really feels like the world was designed first, and this may have been the case in other games, and they've just executed it on another level here. But it really feels like they had their environments designed first, and they've kind of plotted out what they want these ecosystems to look like, and then they've gone, okay, what monsters fit this best? And they've designed them around the environment. Just the way, you know, I think about Nursilla as, you know, I guess we've got multiple different kind of spider, you know, type monsters here. And then the styles of something, I mean, I mentioned Ray Dow, but the way Ray Dow just fits that desert environment and there's that kind of alcove that's been carved out by all the electrical stuff, and now it's just constantly kind of sparking, fizzing away all the time. And it lives there, and like, this just feels so seamless and logical, the way that they've kind of placed the monsters within the world. Or design the monsters to fit the world. It's exceptional what they've done there. Now, obviously, you talk about the environments and those sort of things, and that maybe, you know, links into one of my biggest gripes of the game, which is at least on the console anyway. And I guess we're playing Jason, you're just a
PS5.
base PS5. I'm playing on the
Yep.
Pro. Matt, you're playing on PC.
Yep.
Um,
You got the PC code? You
I've got the PC.
monster.
It's good to be boss.
But like it was frustrating. Like I commented to Matt before we got started, and at one point there that the Final Fantasy VII remake door. There's lots of those doors just all over different textures in the environment. Like it's kind of rough on the console, and that is even in my case leveraging the Pro. I was a bit flat with the way it looked in a few different areas. The monster design, exception. Like the things that they really want you to see, fantastic. But when if it's kind of something of lesser importance, those things stick out. Like there was a few characters I'd see, and you could kind of see parts of their gear that's just like, am I waiting for some pop in here, or is this it? And neither option is a good option. But I was just hoping for pop in, but it just wasn't coming. There's some rough
on the
stuff that I think they'll
PC,
fix.
it's not so bad. There is definitely, like, I'm running a 4080, so it's not a slouch of a card. But I am playing in ultra wide, so that does put an extra strain on things. Which, by the way, it's fantastic in ultra wide. It works really well in ultra wide. Extra real estate is nice. But I will say the DLSS does kick in a little bit in the more hectic moments. So you do see that kind of AI modeling kicking in and reducing some textures on things just to keep the frame rate stable, especially if there's a lot of effects. So some of those fights where there's lightning or fire or things like that, those ape-like flame magma monsters in the oil springs. They generated a lot of effects, and that caused the DLSS to just roll in. It's never bad. Like, it's just in that way that if you've been playing PC games a long time, you go, that's what's happening there. I can see it. I see what you're doing there.
It's like when Congalala shit like farts on you, and you can see all the shit particles flying through you. No.
Fucking Congalala.
That one. That is a. Farting is a mechanic here. All right. Let's go.
Yeah, but otherwise it runs well. I have no PC is always the one that you worry about stability for a release, and it's been stable. There's been no issues at all. Nvidia have released the drivers for it already, so there was no graphical driver issues or anything like that. No crashes. It's running well. It runs poorly on the ROG Ally X, but that's
shocking.
not
Shocking.
That's not to be a surprise to anyone. It does work though. Like, you can play it, but it looks fuck ugly. But you can play it. You can play it, and it maintains a smooth. I've set it to 45 frames a second, and it maintains a smooth 45 at the low graphics settings. Doesn't look amazing, but
if you're just looking to do a couple of hunts on the go, then
if you're just out cruising and
to complement what you're already doing.
I wouldn't buy it if it was your main system. If all you had was a handheld, no, don't get it. But as a sidebar to your main rig, it works all right.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad that you said the PC version is stable, because I know earlier on in those open betas there was a lot of roughness.
So I always worry. I've got an i9 and a 4080, so that's a fairly big rig, and that's a lot of power to throw at problems. And I think that sometimes smooths over the experience for me, and I'm very aware of that.
Sure.
But generally you get a good idea if something's not running well. And my computer didn't seem to be overtaxed at all. There wasn't any worries about the fans going in overdrive or anything like that. So the usual indicators that a game isn't optimized well were non-existent. So that's a good sign.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
There is one problem I have that I do want to talk about briefly, and that's the story flow. I mean, I know that story is the secondary sort of thing for Monster Hunter, but they do place quite an importance on the story here. And the way it doesn't give you chance to breathe, I think, is a big issue in this game. it kind of it jams you from hunt to hunt to hunt to hunt. And if you don't know any better, especially if you're a new player, you won't realize that you can kind of stop in the middle and teleport back to base and get all your shit together, because it feels like, oh, I've just done a monster hunt, or I've used all my potions. Oh shit, I'm into another fight already. I haven't had a chance
to be
to
fair,
go.
I'm versed in it, and I felt that from time to time as well.
Yeah,
like,
you know,
okay,
they-
different narrative structure here. Maybe they're going to kind of give me opportunities as I go, and then I very quickly realize, hang on, this is you're just going to keep pushing me on, and if I don't actually, as you say, kind of deliberately stop to smell the roses, I'm going to be chasing my tail for a while here. And I guess kind of half to Jason's point, it's easy enough at the beginning that maybe that's not going to trouble people too much, but later on, if you haven't cottoned on to what's going on, or the fact that you can pull up stumps and explore the town and go and do some side quests, or go and restock on this, that, or the other, upgrade your gear, like you could find yourself in a bit of a knot, and then bashing your head against a wall in the same way that you're talking about with players who didn't progress beyond 6 or 7 hours in World.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, half the fun of Monster Hunter for a lot of people is Fashion Hunter, right?
Yep.
You get some funky, cool armor here, and then if the game doesn't give you time to play with the funky, cool armor, then what's the point of having it, right? So, I feel like the flow and the balance of that story is out of whack, and I think it needs some more. I think Monster Hunter World did that better in that each hunt was individual. You went back to the base, you had time to base, and then you go on a new hunt. Whereas this one, it's kind of trying to keep this story going, but in the process, they've just kind of jammed a whole bunch of things together, and it's kind of tipped the other way, you know?
Like it definitely feels like they want this to be like each area is a biome, and you have to solve each problem as it comes up, because I was exactly the same. I think it was almost 10 hours of play before I took my first break and went, oh, I don't have to do these quests back to back.
Yeah. That's what it really feels like, you know. I deliberately I worked it out at the end of the first biome. And then realized I don't need to push on. I can go back and do some, side missions, and because I really liked the battle with the kind of worm sand monster.
Bala, whatever they were.
I actually I had quite a challenge with that one with the bow when I initially did it, and I thought I can do that. I can do that better. The bow was not a good choice for that weapon, but I can do that better. Sorry, for that monster. So I wanted to go back and do it, and then I realized that you can do it in the side missions, and then I had a bunch of fun replaying these old ones again, with a bit better gear and a bit more fun, and to play Fashion Hunter as well. Yeah. I think it's important that people know that. I think I'm not usually a big fan of those things to know before you start videos.
I 100% agree with you.
I feel like they're fucking engagement bait most of the time. Like things to know before you start FIFA. It's a soccer game. Just fucking deal with it.
Put the ball in the back of the net, people.
But in this case, I think it will be very helpful for people.
In a beautiful world, I'd sit down and do like a little primer for things, because I was answering a bunch of questions on for a bunch of reviewers, on
the Discord,
going through because it's tons of info. Like, it's way too much info always. Someone was saying that they wish the armor system was a little bit more like Dark Souls, where you could click in on R3 and actually look at what each of the things do. Because you do not get explained. You're like, okay, this is -3 fire res. What the hell does that mean?
What they've done though this time, I think, much clearly is identified the path to upgrade much clearer than it had been in the past. I think Wild Hearts did that really well, in that the whole armor tree and the whole weapon tree was there to begin with, and you could see the progression as you upgraded. Now it's not quite the same in Monster Hunter Wilds, but it is there now that you can see armor and weapon progression much clearer, and kind of gives you an idea of what you should be aiming at. If that's the sort of thing you're after, a particular bow, or you're after a particular set of gear, you kind of know that much clearer. And there's wish lists, and you can highlight them, and it'll tell you which things you should be hunting and things like that, to make that kind of experience a bit better, which is nice, because before Monster Hunter World, it was almost guesswork a lot of the time of what do I need, until you found your first part, and then you could work it out. But it was a lot of guesswork going on. Yeah,
that's fair. I'd agree with that.
There was one thing this game did that I actually found kind of incredible. and it's in relation to how monsters work. Or monster hunts work. So in World, you could save an investigation, and that means the hunt would always be there. But it also refresh, so you'd have to kind of wait until something useful was there. In this, you have quite a few different options for when a monster is available. So you can on the map you can view a timeline, and it'll show, hey, these monsters appear at these times under these weather conditions, and so you can just rest and make those conditions happen. That's cool. Yep. Next, you, depending on what you're doing in the map, you can just run out and something might be there and you can fight it. Awesome, cool, love that. Then there's the random assignment missions, which are the optional ones, which in World were a huge pain in the ass because they were kind of mandatory to do if you're like trying to complete everything.
Yep.
In this, there's just like a hunt for almost every monster, and you can just do that, and it'll put you in that system. And then finally, on top of that, you can, when you find those investigations, that you can still save them. It actually took me a while to work out, because I saw the achievement to like complete an investigation. I'm like, is this like Worlds where I have to like run around and find the bits of the hunter?
Yeah.
Oh, the awful system. But yeah, so you've got like tons of options for like how hunts actually work, how you want them to go. And on top of that, one of the things I found most important for Endgame is it feels like they've taken so much chance out of this game in a good way. Like, in previous games, you would spend hours and hours and hours grinding decorations and charms and monster parts and all that sort of crap. They don't want you to do that. They don't want you to go, oh, yeah, well, sorry, you didn't get a desire sensor, so you didn't get the gem you wanted, time to fight that thing 20 more times. In this, at high level, monster hunts have specific drops that are guaranteed. And some of those are the important drops. So, like, yeah, you can hit the monster more in certain parts and get a higher chance of getting those drops on the fly. But then you've also got the chance at the end of... Yeah, and that's, like, absolutely huge. Like, I finished the game, I've crafted every weapon and almost all the armor I want. I upgraded all the armor I want. And I'm sitting there and going, you know what? I don't have to grind for anything. That's great. I'm so liberated because I don't have to fight whatever. I don't have to fight 50 Rathalos to try and get the drop I want.
And I think that
fight things for fun.
And that'll encourage people to try new weapons.
Yeah.
That will encourage people to go, okay, I've literally hit the limit here. It's time to try something new. And, you know, and I think that's great because, like we've said, there's 14 different weapons with 14 different combat systems. The chances are there's going to be one or two more that click with people. So, yeah.
You just need the push to go and explore them. And, of course, when, you don't have to keep bashing your head against a wall to get the one or two components that you need to finally get the upgrade that you require.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And don't get me wrong, there's still grinding to do at the end game, but, like...
Yeah.
A lot of it is like grinding certificates, which you can do from like any tier X hunt or other thing, and you know, and it's kind of fun to do that stuff because it's guaranteed drops again. So yeah. Super cool. Anyway,
awesome. All right then. I think we've chatted a fair amount. Is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up before we finish this conversation about Monster Hunter?
Give me Master
I thought it was. Yeah, Master Rank, please.
Master Rank. Yeah.
Just give me the expansion already. Just hook it to my veins. 2026, right?
Yeah.
Let's get excited. They haven't announced that, but let's just assume.
Let's assume it's
Mizutsune
coming.
is coming. That's awesome.
There will be a lot of seasonal content shit that's going to go up.
Yeah,
keen to see the collaborations. Obviously, they did such a good job with that in the case of World in particular. We obviously had collaborations with Final Fantasy to get the Behemoth. We had collaborations with Witcher.
Oh, that was good. Also really good.
Wasn't there a Street Fighter one?
Yep.
Yes, there was a Street Fighter.
Man.
Gear though, was that, or was there wasn't a monster?
The Street Fighter one was just gear. Yeah, it was. It was layered armor.
Me, like it's those crossovers with other franchises that bring
the Behemoth was
monsters
so
from that
good.
franchise, and the Behemoth was a particular highlight. Like those sorts of things, I'd love to see more of those. And I think like with what Monster Hunter World achieved, and we saw a version of that when it came to Rise. I think there were some limitations because of the audience they were targeting with the Switch in the first place. But with what that franchise did, I think it's made this franchise so appealing to other companies. Go, no, this is a good marketing beat for us. Like, how can we interact? I'm so excited to see what they can do, partnering with these different companies to go, okay, we'll pull this thing in here and we'll pull that thing in there, and we'll give it a little bit going the other way, because what they put Rathalos or Rathian, I can't remember, I think it was Rathalos, they put in like Final Fantasy 14 back in the day. All those sorts of different things. Like those sorts of collaborations, I think really, really excite me. Mostly about the things coming to Monster Hunter, but sure, we'll share a little bit too. You got to keep
Pacific Rim action or something like that. Get a Kaiju in there. Godzilla.
I love some Dragon's Dogma. I'm going to be honest with you here.
Well, I mean, they can. Yeah, that's the thing. They can already work with some of their own IP as well. There's so many things they can do in house.
Yeah.
But
crossover with Dino Crisis.
if PlayStation's not going to give us the Horizon Horizon Machine Hunter experience, go toss the Thunderjaw in there for a laugh. Why not?
Yeah. Why not? Well, I think we might leave it there. The only thing I want to say at the end is, like, if you've ever contemplated Monster Hunter, don't be afraid to try it. I know it's quite a steep, a game's expensive these days, but I think this is a game that's going to hit more than it's not. But it is the game that you've got to give some time to see if it does hit for you. So I think even if you buy it, I think most people are going to get 10 to 12 good hours out of it anyway. So, and really that's a good slice of entertainment for $80 or $90. So yeah, I think it's worth checking out. And don't be afraid of it, even though it is quite a daunting game to get into.
It is.
That's my take on it. Don't be afraid. The community's cool. Check out guides. There's no shame in doing that. No shame at all.
And the barrier is much smaller with this one. The barrier of entry is much smaller.
Barrier of entry is really good. And like once those little foibles that we talked about, once you get over them, because the information will be out there and it's not hard to get over them once you know that they're there, the barrier is really low. And this is a game that, like Matt said, you can spend 12 hours on it, or like the people that get over that hump and come back to it like every month and dump like another 20-30 hours into it, or more if you're a psychopath. But
Gents, we're days away from millions and millions and millions of people jumping into this game, and I just can't wait to pile into multiplayer with them and just have a blast. It's gonna be awesome.
So cool.
Excellent. All right then, thank you for joining us for this review discussion. Make sure you head over to player2.net.au and check out the full written review from Jason and Paul. It's a co-op review, as a co-op game should have. Make sure you check everything else out while you're there. Podcasts, previews, reviews, opinion pieces, the works. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe, ring the bell, all those things. If you're listening to it on the podcast feed, do whatever your podcast feed suggests to make us look good. Stars, reviews, whatever like that. Just make us look good. It'll be wonderful. Yeah, numbers up, pump us up. Give us even just tell your mum to listen to us. We're fairly safe. We don't swear too much. But thank you for joining us. Jason, where can we find you on the world? I know you hired mainly on social media. So just on Player 2?
Yeah,
or
just Player 2.
So just a Player 2, not anything else in the
Jason's
hospital.
Putting out enough reviews at the moment. He's in white hot form. That don't worry, people. He's got plenty to say. You just need to go check out the review itself.
Yeah,
he doesn't have time to share it on social media.
It's true.
And Paul, what about yourself, mate?
Paul James Games for myself on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. Take your pick.
And you can find me at Huso on Blue Sky. Player2AU is our Blue Sky channel. We have canned the Twitter channels just because, there's only so much musky stuff you can take. And it pushed us over the edge. But otherwise, thank you for joining us for this review discussion, and we'll catch you next time on Player 2. See ya.
See ya.